Hi, I'm Stephen Sklar, and this is Bracketology OHS edition, part number 2. Different setup, same crew. To my left, Mr. Manning, straight out of Union College. Next to him, head coach Supple, coach of the varsity basketball team. And next to him, Mr. Howley. Found out he was a former basketball coach, so he is somewhat credible. Let's not delay, let's get right into it, going over the brackets. First up, we have my own Kansas State, big loss right there. That was a Final Four team. But for the most part, my Sweet 16 is set. 10 out of 16 could be better. One phrase I would use to describe my bracket, Barry Brown. Where were you when they needed you the most? Dean Wade thought he was playing, then he wasn't. Who knows? Barry Brown, this was his moment to step up, to be big time, and he crumbles under the pressure. We have Mr. Manning's bracket. Nothing too bad over here, but we move on to the next slide. Another Final Four team out, Marquette. Why don't you explain it? Give us your one phrase to describe it.
Yeah, I love how you jumped to the bottom part where all the mistakes were. If you can go back to the top part for a second, what you'll see is that I'm feeling pretty good. I think I would describe my bracket as good, not great. I'm happy that Michigan State is still alive. Virginia kind of got by that squeaker that in the first round. They had a little panic attack there. I thought they were going down again. And if you notice, my call might be Virginia Tech over Duke. I think Duke is still one of the most talented teams in the tournament, but they just don't seem to be playing well and to put it all together to make the Final Four. So I'm still going with Tom Izzo. I know you want to focus on the bottom part of the bracket because I made that bold pick of Marquette.
I had them in my Elite Eight.
But yeah, things didn't work out. I got a nice lesson in Ja Morant.
Well, Ja Morant and the Murray State Racers no longer in the tournament, so they got what was coming. Coach Supple, hard to see over here, but he's the only person on the panel with all 4 Final Four teams left. Take us through what's happened so far.
Well, I describe my bracket as chalk. I think I definitely had the safest of the 4 brackets, and I just felt this year that those top seeds, like we discussed last time, were the 4 best teams. I did get a couple of the upsets. Ja Morant in that first round, who I had picked, he solidified himself, I think, as a top 3 pick in this year's NBA draft. The way he was able to get the ball anywhere on the floor and control that game was impressive. Virginia scared me as well because I do have them winning the whole thing, but their defense in the last game and a half has really turned it up and played up to their ability, so I'm still pretty confident in that.
Some of the intangibles, you know you're supposed to write your team on the line, not under it, right?
I go under.
This is the bottom of your bracket. We'll move on. Mr. Howley, how you doing so far?
I'm okay. I'll take it that way. The Villanova...
Is that your one phrase to describe it?
No, my phrase would be disappointing. Just disappointing in the games that are right on the line that went the other way, and disappointing in myself for not doing the homework. Actually watching that Villanova-Purdue game, if I'd seen Purdue during the year, to see how dominant they are inside, would have probably realized that the Big East was so down this year that Villanova, they didn't go up against a competition like that, and the Boilermakers really came to play. So.
And it's actually funny, Carson Edwards boasts a 22.6 player efficiency rating during this year's regular season, but somehow he's come out of nowhere and surprised everyone.
Somebody did their homework.
Yeah,
good job, Steve.
Nice See that book right over there?
Great story on Carson Edwards. Actually, he wanted to quit basketball as a sophomore because he didn't make his varsity team, and his mother told him, "You're not quitting, because if you quit this, you may quit other things in life." And now look at him.
Wow.
That's great.
All right, so we'll get right into the questioning. I'm going to direct this question to Coach Supple. Tom Izzo received a lot of backlash for confronting Aaron Henry on the sideline. What are your initial thoughts about that situation?
I honestly didn't see much wrong with it. I get people overreact at times to that instant emotion and the way he was so far out on the court and approaching a player. But I believe it goes back to accountability, and I believe even Aaron Henry himself said that. He said, I knew what I signed up for when I signed up to play for Michigan State, and Coach Izzo, my parents know what I signed up for. He wants to be held accountable. Coach Izzo has held players accountable for a long, long time. He's one of the better coaches in NCAA, and I believe that's his style. Some people might think it's a little aggressive, a little abrupt, but it's something that he's done forever, and he does it in practice. It wasn't an isolated incident. This is the way he speaks to his players, and I love when he discussed that you don't know what goes on behind the scenes, then the discussions we have leading up to that, all the hours of effort we put into this. For him to let his teammates down at that point, I didn't see much wrong with it, and I think the players understood.
Draymond Green, a former player of Coach Tom Izzo, even said that Tom Izzo's favorite players are the ones that are going to challenge him, battle with him in practice and on the court, and the ones that are going to confront him. Mr. Manning, as a former player, how do you see that confrontation?
I've been on the receiving end many times of a lecture like that, and everybody sees the moment on camera, and everybody has that gut reaction of a kid getting yelled at like that. But I'd be willing to bet what we don't see is Tom Izzo hugging the kid in the locker room or pulling him aside and having a conversation with him, which I'm sure happened. So even though in the moment it seems tough, yeah, like Coach said, that's him. That's the way he's always been, and I would be willing to bet that that player will go to bat for him at any time. Very much like the relationship I had with my coach, who was very tough at times. But again, no one saw those moments where he'd pull me aside and say, "Hey, this is why I got on you."
Mr. Howley?
Yeah, I think it comes down to the question of why are we here, and why are you here? And they're there to be there for the team. Coaches are there to make them the best that they can be, and they want to be challenged. Otherwise, they wouldn't have chosen that. And I think that's what I say to my team too. Like, why are you coming here? Why are you spending these hours each day? And how many hours? We only see the tip of the iceberg. We see that 40 minutes of game time. There's so many hours beforehand of just whether it's the hugs, it's the tears, and it's hard to judge that based on just that little bit we see there, because he wants to get the most out of them because he feels that they owe it to themselves. He owes it to the other players to get the most out of him. And I bet the mom that wouldn't let her son quit, the family wants to see the kid do the best that they can. So I think it's a big pyramid that we only get to see or iceberg that we only get to see that top part of. And I think it's a good insight for people that aren't always familiar with that, to get an idea of it and maybe not jump on things right away, understand the situation before you go right at it.
You mentioned accountability before, Coach Supple. I remember, this is an isolated incident, but I was playing T-ball once and I grounded out. So I ran to the fence and I started crying. My mom came over and she could have went up to the coach and said, help cheer my kid up, maybe give him another at bat somewhere in there, because it's T-ball. Who really cares? But she didn't go to the coach. She went right up to me and she said, at 5 years old, if you don't want to ground out the next time, if you want to get better at what you're doing, Dad or Grandpa, they'll take you to the cages and you can work on hitting off a tee for an hour and a half if you want. And I think that's the reaction parents, coaches need to have with their children, their athletes, rather than trying to hold other people liable for the mistakes that their kid made. And Coach Tom Izzo, he's a basketball Hall of Fame coach. His job is to mentor and guide players to the next level. And if that means he needs to confront them in that fashion, let the man do what he has to do.
I agree. And I tell the players this, there's more of an issue if I don't correct your mistakes as a coach. If I let you jog back on defense and let your teammates down and I don't confront you in that situation, then I'm not doing my job as a coach and I'm letting you down in that situation. So, I think Izzo is Tom Izzo, and he's great at what he does. And again, I agree with that analogy before, is you only get to see the tip. The hours and months and years of work they've put in right before that's not always seen.
All right, let's move on to the bracket type questions. We'll start on the far end with Mr. Howley. Who has impressed you the most so far?
Well, I have to say the Dawkins boys. That was a performance at the end. I think he was the best player on the court at the end of that Duke victory. And Duke is very happy to have escaped there. And, both the coach, going that way, when I heard I didn't know the whole story about Krzyzewski and what Dawkins meant to his program. He was his first big recruit. Started every game that he was ever there for him, and it's 133 games I think he played for Coach K. Got him to his first Final Four when they lost to Louisville, and then Coach K go up against him, and his son ends up being really such a big time player in that game, and for as great as he played, we're gonna remember the near misses that were there, and before we got the cameras rolling, Coach was saying that. Even if that bucket goes in, if that tip goes in, that becomes on the highlight reel of those moments when you just, those special moments that you see. And it'd be a long offseason for that team to go back home and think about. But that was an entertaining game. It's an entertaining game, I think, as we've had in the contest, and that was impressive.
Well, while we're on that game, the UCF Duke game, I'd like to give my answer to that question. While I would love to say Jarrett Culver, who he's put up, I think it was 29, 8, and 7 in that first game, and then put up a double-double with 16 and 10 in that second game. He's played himself into lotto pick conversation, and maybe the second best guard in the entire draft, maybe behind John Morant. But I was really impressed with the Duke freshmen. Zion, RJ Barrett, Trey Jones. They went into that game. They stayed composed. They stayed disciplined towards the end. And they shot 40% from three. That is clearly their glaring weakness over the course of the entire season. If you're shooting 40% from three when there's Taco Fall in the middle, challenging your inside shots, and that's with Trey Jones shooting 1 of 8 from three, you're doing a great job making those necessary corrections pregame. Coach Supple.
My most impressive so far, I'll go more of a team aspect. I think Gonzaga and UNC have been the most complete teams in there. But I'm going to give a shout out to one of your picks in Texas Tech. I believe their defensive efficiency has been outstanding. The way they made Buffalo just stagnant with the ball. Buffalo couldn't make any simple passes to get into any flow. And I think their defense can really challenge any team in the country this year. So I've been very impressed.
Mr. Manning.
Yeah, I would have to echo that North Carolina is probably playing the best basketball right now as a team. They look really good. And if I had a chance to do my picks over again, I would think I would reconsider that Houston pick. And I'm also really impressed with Tennessee. I know I have Virginia going to the Final Four, but I love the team chemistry in Tennessee. I love the way they play. They're big, they have size, they shoot the basketball, and they're tough. And they really seem to play together as one. They pull for one another, and that team aspect can carry them to the Final Four if they should see Virginia in the Elite Eight.
Grant Williams had what I was calling a Frankenstein moment. Played down throughout the entire game. Overtime comes, he's alive.
Yeah.
He came back alive. He willed that team to a win, and I think that shows a lot about his leadership and his straight-up talent.
Yeah, they're very good.
Next question I have, what is the matchup of the Sweet 16? 8 games, you get to pick one, Mr. Manning.
Well, I guess I'll go with my heart because I am a Duke fan, but I have Virginia Tech over Duke. So that's a game I'm really looking forward to. I think UCF laid out a game plan for Virginia Tech a little bit of how to guard Duke. I could not believe, as a Duke fan, that at one point in that game against Central Florida, that they literally were asking Duke to shoot the basketball. And when Trey Jones and Goldwater were on the floor together, they really were not an outside threat. And I think that's going to be their Achilles heel in the tournament. So I'm interested to see how Virginia Tech comes out and plays them. And if they can contain Zion and Barrett, then they have a shot.
It's all about knowing your role. Coach Supple.
I love that game too, only because Virginia Tech has beat them once this year, so I don't think they'll be afraid. But the game I picked as my most wanting to watch is Texas Tech Michigan, because I really want to see if that defense can get out and guard the way they have against some lesser opponents. And I think if they can do that this week, it's going to be very, very interesting.
Mr. Howley.
I'm most invested in the Gonzaga-Florida State rematch because that is really going to be the big test for the Zags, see if they are for real, if they can actually do what they need to do to show that they earned that #1 spot. On the other side, that Houston-Kentucky matchup looks like it should be really exciting. So I think we're in store for a lot of fun games this weekend.
I'm actually not a big fan of the Duke-Virginia Tech game. You mentioned it before. I did my homework. I got a bunch of notes right in front of me for all the games. Virginia Tech boasts a 1.35 assist-to-turnover ratio, but they're 297th in all of D1 basketball in blocks per game. They don't boast the interior defense that could stop Duke. It's not February 26th. I don't see them doing much to stop them. But the game I am really interested in is Purdue-Tennessee. These are two not very good defensive teams. This is going to be a scoring battle. I'm excited to see what Carson Edwards does on the big stage. I think there's going to be scoring galore in this game. Sweet 16, always an exciting time, intense games, but what is your lock for the Sweet 16? We'll start in the middle with Coach Supple.
My lock is I'm going with UNC. I just think they've been the most complete team. I think Kobe White has been outstanding the way he pushes their tempo and leads them. You know, every time there's a big shot, he's able to settle them down, get the look they want. I think Luke May's veteran leadership, he played outstanding in that second round game. So my lock for the second round is UNC.
It's worth noting that Nasir Little had a very good game in that second round matchup also. Mr. Howley.
That sounded like a good lock, but I'm happy because I got UNC in my Final Four, and I think that's it. But I'm ride or die for the Zags, so I'm gonna lock them up against Florida State. They come back, they get their revenge, and they're moving on.
Mr. Manning.
I picked Tom Izzo to cut down the nets, so I'm going to stay with Michigan State, and hopefully that coaching intensity they can bring to the Final Four and cut down the nets.
I'm actually going to stay a little bit bolder. I'm going to say Michigan State is a lock over LSU. LSU 177th in three-point defense. While MSU is not a prolific three-point shooting team, if they need to go outside, they will shoot from the outside. It's another battle of two great rebounding teams. LSU, they're 9th in offensive rebounds per game. MSU is 5th in the rebound margin. Last time I checked, 5 is better than 9. So I'm going to take MSU.
Great job with the numbers there, Steve.
Thank you. I didn't even get to go through all of them. I got pages and pages. I didn't even get to my 2 mini games. We're a little bit pressed for time. But thank you guys for coming down. We got another part coming up soon. Any final remarks before we go?
If I may, I showed this to my family at home, and my kids were impressed. They said, "You're on YouTube?" So thank you to the Sailor Station. Thank you to the broadcasting class for everything you do, and a big hello to Nicole, Madison, Jackson, and Owen.
Special thanks to Noah Scott for making this beautiful logo we have over here. Thank you, Noah Scott. Any other final remarks?
Thank you for everything, guys. Glad to be here.
Yeah.
All right.
Thanks for having us.
We'll see you for part 3. I'm Stephen Sklar, here, Bracketology OHS edition, part 2. Thank you.